Good that there's no lockdown now, because Maros Šefčovič might have a party now. Because Minister Frost, responsible for EU relations, has announced his resignation. One reason for the move is concerns about decisions by the British government. So, infamous British Minister David Frost has announced in a letter to Prime Minister Boris Johnson that he will no longer hold office. The politician responsible for the relations with the EU cited concerns about the government's course as the reasons for his withdrawal. The Mail on Sunday and the broadcaster ITV had recently reported on Frost's decision. Accordingly, the minister is said to have submitted his resignation about a week ago. Johnson persuaded him to stay in office until January. That night, the British government confirmed Frost's resignation. The Prime Minister's office published the letter in which the minister announced that he would resign with immediate effect as Brexit is now safe. He went on to say that he had raised his concerns about the current direction of travel to Johnson. Frost wrote that he hoped Britain would quickly become a poorly regulated, low-tax, entrepreneurial economy at the forefront of modern science and economic change. So that's what he and his pals wanted. The government confirmed media reports that Frost had submitted his resignation out of disillusionment with the government's course. This should include the corona restrictions, such as the introduction of the particularly controversial 3G certificates for clubs and major events in Great Britain. This week, almost 100 Conservative MPs had refused to vote for the Prime Minister. Frost is also said to have rejected the higher spending on the road to climate neutrality and tax increases. Frost, who is also a member of the British House of Lords, negotiated the Brexit trade pact with his French colleague Michel Barnier last year. The agreement enables largely tariff-free trade between Great Britain and the EU, even after the country left the European Union. However, there are still points of contention. The UK and the EU are at odds over the Brexit rules for Northern Ireland. Negotiations on a special status for the north of that island are ongoing. After the resignation of Brexit negotiator David Frost, Foreign Minister Liz Truss will take over his duties. Truss was previously Trade Minister and had negotiated trade agreements with non-EU countries. The EU Commission and the British government are taking a short break now over Christmas in negotiations on the check of goods transported to north of Ireland from England, Scotland or Wales. The talks should continue in January, said the responsible EU Commission Vice President Maros Šefčovič after talks with the British Brexit Minister David Frost, so mostly the last ones. Although intensive negotiations have been underway since October about how customs and phytosanitary checks can be made simpler so that they affect the transport of goods as little as possible, an agreement is not in sight. After the recent meeting, Lord Frost was even more skeptical about the chances of success than Šefčovič. Frost's resignation exacerbates the crisis for Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who is shrouded in scandals. Last week, his Tories suffered a heavy defeat in a by-election in the Conservative heartland of North Shropshire. The result sparked shockwaves in the party, and in addition, the country is slipping into the largest wave of infections to date since the outbreak of the corona pandemic. But for tough corona measures, the Prime Minister is increasingly lacking the support of his own party and, in view of the increasing number of reports of lockdown violations in the government, also the moral authority. Lord Frost's resignation could not have come at a worse time for Johnson, writes the ITV television station on its website. Conservative MP Andrew Bridgen described Frost's resignation on the Times radio station as a devastating blow to the government and the Prime Minister. And he wrote on Twitter, "The Prime Minister is running out of time and he needs friends to keep his promises and the discipline of the true Conservative government." Boris Johnson would only have two options: to change or to leave. In any case, the Tories would have to go back to the Conservative policies for which they were elected. And the Prime Minister must seriously consider whether he wants to support this change or not. David Frost's resignation is a turning point. It feels like old Boris Johnson, whom we knew and loved from previous years, has been kidnapped, Bridgen told ITV. Party colleagues expressed themselves similarly. In an article for the Sunday Telegraph, Danny Kruger and Miriam Kate stressed that their party must change. We find ourselves confronted with various allegations of rule violations, while the country itself is in a swamp of rules and regulations that damage the social and economic fabric of our nation. Our supporters are embarrassed by the former, tired by the latter, and angry by both. Other Tory MPs were in favour of Johnson's resignation if more mistakes were made and the Prime Minister did not change course. When asked about this, Johnson just replies, "We are now focusing on doing our job. That means we are making sure that we not only have the fastest vaccination and booster campaign in Europe, as we have done so far, but that we are also able to avert the harmful effects of the Omicron with the Get Boosted campaign." That is what he's concentrating on, and that is exactly what the population currently wants. But fastest, 500,000 in Germany a day. In Germany, we had 1.5 million a day. Just saying. Johnson's support within his own ranks began to crumble in October when he tried to save former Tory MP Owen Paterson from suspension. This had violated the lobby rules. The MPs were coerced into supporting Paterson. The government later decided to suspend that move. There was also displeasure about broken promises by the Prime Minister, among other things, to expand the railway lines in the north of the country and to increase social security to finance social reforms. Most recently, Johnson drew the party's anger after it was revealed that he was partying in lockdown. Last week, 100 MPs voted against the corona passport proposed by Johnson, and in the fight against the Omicron variant, which Johnson wants to contain with stricter measures, resistance is already stirring. It is questionable whether Britain will become the greatest economy in Europe anytime soon. In any case, Boris Johnson is still trying to do his best in his own way. The Commission Vice President, Šefčovič, again emphasized that the EU would not negotiate changes to the Northern Ireland Protocol, which is part of the withdrawal treaty, or the arbitration role of the European Court of Justice, the ECJ, in this dispute. During his talks in Northern Ireland, he was asked about the ECJ at most 2 or 3 times in the past 6 months. The people and businesses in Northern Ireland are much more interested in reducing bureaucracy and turnaround times for imports into the region and setting up express lanes for goods. It is time we finally resolved all of these problems created by the type of Brexit the UK government chose, said Šefčovič. And the majority of the Northern Irelanders is with him. The Commission remains unhappy with the way the British are implementing the Northern Ireland Protocol. Certain checks to prevent goods from Great Britain from entering the EU internal market that do not meet EU standards are still not carried out. As long as negotiations are ongoing, the EU does not want to press ahead with any infringement proceedings, says a Commission official when asked by German media. The Commission reserves the right to do so at any time. They do not want to commit to deadlines by which they will tolerate British check practices. Frost also reiterated his threat that London would suspend parts of the Northern Ireland Protocol if negotiations did not move forward, and I'm hoping now that we will not hear that often again. On Friday, the Commission presented the announced legislative proposals aimed at amending some EU pharmaceutical legislation. For example, the Commission wants to allow innovative, life-saving drugs to be brought to Northern Ireland unhindered for the time being, even if they are only approved in Great Britain but not yet in the EU. This is to prevent bottlenecks in the supply of such drugs in the British region. Generics approved in the UK, such as paracetamol, can also be brought to Northern Ireland, and batch tests do not have to be repeated for deliveries via the rest of the UK if they already existed in the UK or the EU. Certain exemption rules will also apply to pharmaceuticals delivered to Ireland, Malta, and Cyprus for 3 years. Traditionally, these 3 EU countries are largely supplied with medicines from Great Britain. While goods checks are still being negotiated in Northern Ireland, new rules for the import of goods from the EU into Great Britain will come into force on January 1st. When introducing checks after Brexit, London opted for a phased model but changed the schedule twice, most recently in September. From January 1st, importers and transport companies will have to prepare for full customs checks and import declarations, so-called pre-notifications, for agri-food products from the EU. The EU Haulage Association, Queere, fears that despite the extended preparation time, not all dealers and transport companies are yet equipped for the new requirements, especially small and medium-sized companies. Queere warns that some operational details for the new checks have not yet been clarified. Yeah, I expected that from the UK government. This concerns, for example, the functioning of IT systems or the question of which agri-food products require import declarations. There's also still confusion because of different procedures in different ports and about who has which obligations in the supply chains. According to the British plans, further new regulations will come into force on July 1st. Health certificates are then required for the export of agri-food products from the UK. There should also be SPS checks on arrivals from the EU, and phytosanitary certificates should be checked. Likewise, security declaration for imported goods. Queere notes that London changed the schedule for checks on imports of goods from Ireland this week and extended deadlines. So still tons of chaos, and probably a lot of people will not even know or get informed by this government what is necessary when. But I'm still thinking there's a big party in the EU right now about the Frosty news. So bye bye Frosty, and I'll see the rest of you in my next video. Bis gleich.